This is a vector drawing exercise, and we're going to show you how you can draw up all of the vectors for the banner that you can see here. We're mostly going to look at using the polyline tool to draw up the vectors, and we're going to show you how we can edit the vectors using the powerful node editing tool. Ultimately, these vectors were going to be used to model a banner at a later date using the two-rail sweep function. So let's go and close this down, and we'll go and create a new file. We're working with a single-sided job. I'm going to give this a width of 18 inches, height is going to be 6, material thickness is going to be 3/4 of an inch. I'm going to set my Z0 position on the material surface, XY datum position is going to be in the centre of my job. Then I could go ahead and press OK. So we're going to draw up the vectors for the banner using the polyline tool. Before we start to draw any vectors, first I'd just like to check my snap options. So to do that, we're going to go to Edit. I'm going to use the option Snap Options here, or I can see I can access this form using the shortcut key F4, and that will open up the snapping options. Now, as I'm about to draw up quite an organic shape, I'd just like to tweak my snapping radius. By default, we have this set to 10 pixels. Now, for organic drawing, I prefer my radius setting at its lowest at 4 pixels, as this enables me to make points exactly where my cursor is. And you may want to play with the settings to find a preference that works for you. Okay, so if that snapping radius set to small, I'm just going to go ahead and press OK. And one final adjustment is I'm just going to turn off smart snapping. And the reason for that is I am drawing up organic shapes, so there isn't really a need to have the smart snapping feature switched on. I'll still keep the geometry snapping on, as that will enable me to still be able to snap to centres, midpoints, things like that, which I may find useful. So now we're ready to begin drawing. So let's go into the polyline tool. So in the polyline tool, we can choose precise values where we want to start our first point, or we could simply just click at the centre point here, so I can see where my cursor is. It's at X0, Y0. I can see that we're in the centre as well because we've highlighted the vertical and horizontal lines for our overall job. So it's allowing me to snap to that centre point. So I'm just going to click here. That's my first point. And then the next point, I'm just going to roughly draw a shape in. So I'm going to come in over here and roughly sketch in a shape like this. Okay, to close or to finish off my drawing, I can just press space. You'll see there I can now draw another line if I wanted to. Okay, I'm happy with that, so we're just going to go and close that down. So now that we've got the basic shape, what we need to do is edit it to give it a bit of curvature so it looks more ribbon-like. So to do that, all I do is select my vector and I come over here to Node Editing. Or I could press the shortcut key N on the keyboard to access Node Edit mode. Okay, so you can see all the straight points that we created when we drew all of those lines in the polyline tool. Now what I'd like to do is I'd like to smooth all of these points out. So to do that, I'm just going to drag a box, so just click in, drag in a box to cover all of the nodes that I'd like to change. Okay, so you can see that now they're all highlighted because they're all red. And then I'm going to go on the keyboard and press S, and S is going to smooth all of those nodes out. And so all of these spans that were once straight are now Bezier curves. And you'll notice that the nodes are now blue. That's telling me they're smooth nodes. And we're also presented with these control handles. And it's these control handles that really give us the power to really transform the shape of the vector by moving them, pulling them, stretching them and shortening them. And you'll notice that when I select one handle, it actually moves in tangent through the node, and you'll notice that the other control handle is also moving at the same time. So let's just have a look at this area here. Now really what I'd like to do is I'd like to have this vector flowing up to the center point here horizontally. At the moment we can see it's not doing that, so I need to look at aligning my control handle with the actual node itself. And that way, when I create a shape from this vector and ultimately mirror that component over, we're not going to see any discontinuity between the two shapes. So to do that, I'm just going to select this node here. I'm going to hold down Shift and I'm going to select the control handle there. So I can see they're both highlighted. Then I'm going to press Y on the keyboard and that's going to align them in the Y axis, and you can see now that that vector is coming in horizontally into the center point. And so all we need to do now is just tweak all of these nodes to really transform the shape of this vector. So we can just move nodes, we can pull on the control handles. I'm just going to move that one down here, pull this handle up a little. If I wanted to, I could insert a new node here by right clicking, using the option to insert a point, or I could use the shortcut key on the keyboard, which is I, to insert a node. I'm going to bring this one down. I just want to pull that over, and this one, bring that up. Pull on this handle over here, just bring that down, nudge that in a little, just turn that around there. And you'll just keep tweaking with these until you're happy with the overall shape of the vector that you've got there. Just bring that one down. Just going to pull that node, that control handle up a little. And I just increase the height of that handle there and maybe nudge that down just a little bit. Then we could take a look at the overall shape of the vector just by clicking in the white space, so we can see that there. I just want to make a few little edits here. I'm going to take that and just bring that up and maybe shrink this handle down, and also do the same to this one here. So bring that over, click in the white space, we can see the shape that we've got there. And so we're just going to make one tiny edit here. So I'm just going to pull this handle in a little. Let's take a look at that. I'm quite happy with the curvature that we've got there. So normally when you're creating shapes or organic shapes like the one that we've got here, you'd normally have an image that you would sketch over in order for you to reference to, so that you can create a good shape. Okay, so now that we're happy with that shape, let's put our cursor back into normal selection mode. What I'd like to do is I'd like to create a copy of this vector, and I'd like to move it exactly 2.5 inches up the y-axis, so we create the top part of our banner. So to do that, I'm just going to select this vector. I'm going to use the option here to copy that. And with that still selected, we're actually going to move that. We're going to move that relative to its current position, 2.5 in Y. Apply that, and you'll see it's moved there. We can close that down, and then we can paste in the original vector that we copied. So to give us a better understanding of how the overall ribbon is going to look, we're just going to input some lines that will basically represent each of these folds. So to do that, let's go into the polyline tool, and I'm just going to click at this point here and just bring that down to this one here. Okay, and then I'm just going to press space just to accept that and then start a new line. And we're going to come over here, click, and then click to that bottom part there, space again to join those, and then we're going to click here and then click at that point there, and then we're just going to get to those end points and then space to come out there. And so you can see we've got this big fold here. Okay, so that's going to come over, and then underneath this fold we're going to have this fold here, so it's this section. Right, it's going to go under, and then it's going to come over, and then underneath this part we're going to have a fold that you can see here, so it's this shape underneath there, and then the last fold is this one here, and that's going to come over that last shape, this underneath shape here. So now that we've got a better understanding of how each one of those folds is going to look, we could use this as a basis to further edit the overall shape, just to give it a better perspective. I want this area to look as though it's tapering off into the background. So let's come out of the polyline tool. We're going to go back into node edit mode, and we're just going to again edit all of the nodes, the handles, until we're happy with the overall shape. So I'm going to take this vector here, and I'm just going to bring that over at an angle like that. I'm going to do the same over here, bring that over. Might just want to stretch that out a little here. This one, I'm also going to bring that in at an angle, and then we're going to take this one and also bring that in there. Okay, so I'm just going to zoom in a little just so I can see this a little clearly. Okay, and then we're just going to individually edit the actual shape of the curvature. I'm going to box select all of these and just nudge them over to the left a little, and then I'm going to go in there and just individually tweak those. Okay, I'm just going to take that, bring that up there, and go back into this vector here. Just going to bring that over, round that off a little, bring that round. Okay, so you can see the curvature there. The bottom here, let's just move that over and up to the left hand side there. I might just want to round that off a little and then just bring that over. I could just round that off there. Okay. Just going to bring that over here and then nudge that down and then bring that over. Again, let's just zoom in so you can see that a little better. Okay, this isn't too bad. You can see that we're starting to apply that perspective there. I just want to take this part here, just nudge that up, bring that over to the right hand side. And again, let's just click off just to take a look at the overall part. Okay, so here, I'm just going to bring that around and move that over and just bring that up again, and just using the right arrow key I'm just going to nudge that over there. And here, shorten this handle, might just stretch that up there, and again we can click just to take a look at the overall part. We can line those up just to see how those folds will actually look. Okay, this isn't too bad. I may just want to tweak this area here, so I'm just going to take that, just nudge that over ever so slightly and bring that over here. Okay, I think I've made that curve a little bit too big. Again, zoom in will help me to see this a little better, and then we might want to just bring that over like so. Okay, I think we're happy with the way that this banner looks, so let's just zoom to fit just to take a look at that as a whole. So I quite like the perspective that we've got there. So I don't need these connecting lines anymore, so I'm just going to delete those. Okay, so just select it and delete it with the delete key on the keyboard. And the next thing that I need to do is I need to look at cutting these two vectors at the apex of each one of these curves. And the reason for that is that we're going to look at joining them from the top to the bottom so that we can create closed regions in order for us to crop our components back to once we've modelled the parts using the two-rail sweep. Okay, so to do that, we're just going to go back into node edit mode, and I'm just going to zoom in slightly just using the scroller of my mouse. I'm just going to roughly guess where that apex is. I'm going to right mouse click and use the option cut vector, or I could press C on the keyboard, and that's going to cut that vector. I'm going to do the same over here, so around here, C to cut that, over here, C to cut that on there. Then I'm going to take this one again, C to cut this point here, C to cut this point over here, and then over here we're just going to press C there, and you'll see now we've got a series of separate vectors because we used the cutting option to cut those vectors. So now let's just go and zoom to fit, And then we could look at actually joining these vectors to create the closed regions. So let's go back into normal selection mode. I'm going to take this vector here, hold down shift and select this vector here. Then I'm going to use this option over here to join closed vectors with a straight line. And you'll see that that inputs two straight lines for me there. So now let's select this vector here, shift and select this vector here, and again join with a straight line. Okay, so this isn't what I was expecting. The reason why it's done that is that it's joined the two vectors up at the closest point, which appears to be these 2 points here. So we're actually going to undo this, and we're just going to manually put our own vector in ourselves. So we're going to use the polyline tool. Just going to snap to that point there, and then snap to that point there. Right mouse click to come out there. Then we'll hold down shift and select these vectors here. So with those three vectors selected, we're going to come in and use the join open vectors option. We can see at that tolerance, the number of vectors after we've joined this is going to be one open vector. So when we join it and close that, we can see it's joined those, they're all joined, and now we can input a straight line there. Okay, so to continue, let's just select this vector here, hold down shift to select this one, again join with a straight line and then join again. So we've got the two straight lines in place. Then we'll select this vector, shift and select this vector, and again join with a straight line. Again, that's found the closest point. It's not really what I'm looking for, so let's undo that, go into the polyline tool. We're just going to manually sketch that shape in, right click to come out, hold down shift, select all three vectors there. We're going to join them at that tolerance, join, close them, select it again, and then we're just going to join with a straight line. So we can see here we now have my 4 closed regions, which we'll use at a later stage in order for us to crop our components to. Now there is one final edit that I'd like to make, and that's based on the tail end of my ribbon shape here. I just want to give it a little more shape so it looks more ribbon-like or more flag-like. So to do that, let's just go into node edit mode, and if we just zoom in there, you can see that we have this point here, and this point represents the midpoint between this node here and this node here. So it's the center point of this span. And if I click on that and just drag that in, it will create a node for me, and it will position it in the place that I dragged it to. Okay, so if I right click here, we're going to turn this span into a Bezier span. I'm going to do the same for this one here, and then I could just look at just changing the shape of this just to give it a bit more of a ribbon shape. Okay, you can take a look at that. Oh, that's not too bad. So let's just use the option here to zoom to fit. Now our cross sections need to be open vectors. So what I need to do is I need to look at removing the bottom span of this rectangle here. So to do that, let's go into node edit mode. We're going to right click on that span, use the option delete span, or I could use the D key on the keyboard. That's the shortcut key to delete that span. Okay, so now what we need to do is we need to edit this shape according to how we want the part to look. So you've just got to imagine visualizing the finished part as if you were looking up the y-axis. What does that shape look like? So that's what we're going to do here. Now I'm just going to zoom in a little using the scroller of my mouse. I'm just going to take this node here and I'm going to snap that to the center point between the two nodes. Okay, so you can see that we've done that there. Then we're going to right click here. I'm going to change this span into a Bezier span, so we've got our handles, and then we can play around with the curvature of this part. Now I want this control handle to be in line horizontally with this node here. Again, it's the same as what we did before when we originally drew this vector here. We made sure that we've got the vector coming in horizontally to the center point, so that when we create that shape it's actually going to come in and we're not going to have a discontinuity. And we're going to do the same here. So I'm going to take this node here, hold down shift and select this node here, then I'm going to press Y on the keyboard to align that shape in Y. Right then, so now I can take this node here and then I could just bring that over a little bit so you can see we've got this curvature coming round and then it's coming down at this point here. And this cross section represents this fold here. I want to just increase that shape there if I wanted to. And so I quite like the way that that looks. So now we can move on and think about the next cross section, which is this fold here. So to do that, I'm going to put this back into selection mode. I'm going to select it again to put it into transform mode. And if I press Control down on the keyboard and then take the right hand side here, I'm just going to drag that in. What it's going to do is going to create a copy of the component. It's just going to shrink it the width that I select. I want to do it roughly at the same width as the fold that we've got here, so that seems to be okay. And so now what we need to do is we need to edit the shape of this cross section. Okay, so here what's happening here is the fold is actually going to come underneath the main fold here, and it's going to come up a little bit towards the right hand side. At the moment I can see that cross section is coming well over our main fold that we've got here, so we need to bring that down. So if we go into node edit mode, I'm going to take this node here, I'm just going to nudge that down quite a little bit so it's well underneath the first fold cross section that we have. And then I'm going to take this control handle and we're also going to bring that down so we can start to see how the shape will flow. If I zoom in a little so I can see the shape a little better, I'm just going to pull this down here. And I'm also going to bring this shape up over to the right hand side there so you can see that wave curvature that we've got in our vector there. So it's going to come down and it's going to go back up on itself, and that's going to represent this fold here. Okay, so with that one in place we can go back into normal selection mode, and like we did to this vector here, we're actually going to take it, put it into selection mode, into transform mode even, and I'm going to hold down Control. This time I'm going to take the left side, I'm going to drag that out to the width of the next fold, which is this one here. And again, let's go in and node edit that. So we're going to go into the node edit mode, and I'm just going to zoom in a little so I can see that. I'm just going to drag this handle down over here, like so. And then this one, I'll just bring that over to the left hand side there. I'm going to just bring it down a little bit more. Okay, so one thing I need to make sure is that this span does not come below the leg of our first fold. So we want to make sure we've got some thickness in this fold here. Okay, so that's not too bad. I can see I've got quite a bit of thickness there, so that's okay. We can see that this shape is now going to flow from this fold here. It's going to come down and go back up, and we can see we've represented that there in our cross section. Okay, so back into selection mode, we're going to take that, select it to put it into transform mode, hold down Control. I'm just going to drag that over to the left, again roughly the same width as the last fold, and then we could go into node edit mode and really transform the shape of that vector. So let's just take this handle here, I'm going to bring that up over there, same for this one here. I want to take that node and just nudge that down using the down arrow key, and we'll just make that a little bit more rounded. Okay, so I think that's okay. Let's just put that in selection mode, then we'll use the option here to zoom to fit. We can take a look at that as a whole. So we can see we have our cropping shapes for each one of our folds, and we also have the cross section for each of those folds, where our main fold is going to start this point here and it's going to taper down. As we get to the next fold, it's going to come down and then raise back up, so you can see that curvature there. And then as we get to the third fold, it's going to come down and it's going to raise back up as it meets the last fold here, and then that last fold is going to curl over on top of the previous fold. So now we have vectors that represent our cropping areas, we have vectors that represent our cross sections. Last set of vectors we need are our vectors that are going to represent our drive rails. Now our drive rails are basically lines that are going to go on the edge of each one of our folds. So to do that, we're going to use the Draw Polyline tool. So for my first point, I'm actually going to type in a precise value in here, so 0.01 in x, and then I'm going to type in -2 for y. I'm going to press add. You can see that point's been added there. I'm just going to drag that up, click that in place, right mouse click to come out there, and you can see I've got my first vector or drive rail. And if we zoom in, we can see that it's a fraction to the right of my original cropping shape. And that's just so that when we create our two rails, they're actually going to be clearing the overall shape that we would like to crop this to. So let's go in and draw another polyline, and then we'll draw up the rail for the left hand side of the first fold. So I'm just going to zoom in using the scroller of my mouse, and then we're just going to roughly sketch in a shape. And I'm just going to click to enter that in. Okay, it's not too bad. Then I'm just going to draw another one for the right hand side. So when we come to the second fold, we're actually going to use the same rail that we used for the first fold in the second. So I'm just going to click to create my first point, then come down and click to create the second point. I'm just going to right mouse click here, and this vector, I'm just going to bring that in a little bit just so it's a little bit closer, and then this one here I may want to go into node edit mode, and I'm just going to take that node there and using the right arrow key I'm just going to nudge that over. Okay, so you can see it's just a little bit over there, and then we're just going to nudge that in using the left arrow key. Okay, back into the polyline tool. This time we're going to look at creating the rail for the left hand side of this fold. So we've already got this rail for this fold here. So now I just need to simply just draw that rail in, like so. Space to enter that in, and then we could look at drawing this rail in over here, and then again click, right click to come out. Now let's just double check where those are positioned. Okay, so that's not too bad, it's very close. And then this one over here, let's just zoom in there. Okay, and that's not too bad. So let's just use the option here to zoom to fit. So you'll notice that not only have we come out a fraction to the actual cropping shape, we've also accommodated the length in all of these rails to ensure that we get the whole of that cropping shape within each one of those vector rails. And so that completes this exercise on how to draw all of the parts in order for us to model a banner. So let's go and save this project. So we're going to go to File, Save As, and in the project folder we're going to call this one Banners and Ribbons Vector Drawing. And you can access that there.